Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Punch Kick Choke Chat. My name is Sean Benson. I'm one of your hosts, and I'm so happy to be here tonight with Sensei Sabastian Velilla. We have so much to talk about, but I want to start with a question, or at least a thought that we're going to go around the horn on. But we'll start with you, Sensei Velilla. You brought this up in our pre-chat, which is the fact that when one of the masters dies, we lose a totality of everything they ever experienced, touched, thought. So, how do we mitigate that as much as possible? And how much of that do we just accept and get to our own training with not a disrespectful shrug, but that's life? Where do you go with that?
Well, I mean, it's a great point. We were talking about earlier. Our senseis, all my sensei are Japanese at the moment, and all my senseis are in their late 70s, mid 80s. And I make it a point to travel to Japan once or twice a year to try to absorb as much time and stories that they have before they pass away. Higuchi Sensei, who we will see here in June at the JMAC seminar, June 28th, 29th, and 30th, I believe, or 27th to the 29th. He's 83, 84 years old. He's had two heart attacks. And when he goes, that whole wealth of information and knowledge and wisdom is gone. So I think that it's super important that we have that time and we cherish that time with our sensei, not only for techniques, but again, those side stories, how things happen, how he got to the dojo, how he met his sensei, right? The stories before the war, all those things that we don't even think about, those hardships that happened, how he developed as a person, that are so important, that enabled him to become the teacher he is today.
Well, it's funny you say that because the first sentence you said about the stories, I wrote down in capital stories, and then you circled back to it. Um, is there a point at which the stories are almost more important than the lessons?
Absolutely. Oh, I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah, I think so.
Sensei, no offense, let's go to you on this. You know, you've taught me a lot about spending time with your teacher and your mind, and but where is it so fundamental to maintain that previous generation's information, and at what point do we have to just shrug and accept that we're not going to get it all?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a person to shrug and just accept anything I should know about me. That's not really in my nature.
It's one of my
Uh,
favorite things you've said on this show.
uh, but having said that, I mean, have to attack your relationship with your teachers and your students the same way you attack everything else in your martial arts. Maybe attack is not the right word, but with the same obsession. Let's say that with the same obsession. Um, and I can only speak from my own experience. This show is basically premised by this question that we're just asking right now, right? The show is primarily about us trying to document different martial artist stories in their own words. And I would venture to say that when it comes to Sensei Legacy, outside of talking to Sensei Legacy, if you wanted to know the most about Sensei Legacy, I gotta be one of the top five people on the face of the earth that you could come to and sit down over a period of time. I mean, I can put you in a car and drive you to his house in Rimouski where he grew up. Like I know where it is. I can take you there. And listen, I love every second on the floor that I spent with Sensei Legacy and all the karate that he's taught me and teaches me. But I wouldn't trade 1 second in the car drinking coffee or 1 second sitting on his sofa watching hockey games together. It's a deep, rich history, and I'm happy that I'm part of 36 years of that deep, rich history. But I'm equally happy to have had the privilege of being able to ask him questions about himself, Richard Kim, Benny Allen, like his instructors, places he trained when he was a yellow belt, when he was a green belt. I feel very privileged to be in that position. And I think it's super important. If students only go to the dojo to learn the techniques from their teacher, they're going to be shallower students, in my opinion, and shallower martial artists.
Thanks, Sensei. Let's go to you next, Sensei Suino. And, I know some of your instructors when you were younger didn't necessarily speak the same language as you, at least when you got to Japan. So, Are the stories as important as the training? I'm going to put a little asterisk beside that one for you just to see if you agree.
Well, I think they become that way, right? I'm not sure that's true of us when we started. We come through this through martial arts, right? Through the training. And so I don't know, for my first, whatever, 10 years or 20 years with a teacher, I didn't think much of it. But you start soaking up the stories, and then as you get farther along in this game, you realize how important those are, the cultural glue. Um, I was lucky to be able to speak a fair amount of Japanese, and so I had great conversations with Yamaguchi Sensei and Sato Sensei. Um, and learned a lot about their lives and got a lot of their philosophies. I definitely treasure both the time on the floor with them in the dojo and the time at their homes, sitting over a beer or a dinner and talking. Yeah, I think it's a cumulative experience, and it's way richer if you have both. Right. I've been at the homes of those guys. I've visited their graves. I have their pictures hanging in my dojo. I will, right, and I've said this many times. Both of those senseis, but particularly Yamaguchi Sensei, have more influence on me as a man, as a human being, as a father, than anybody else in my life. So obviously the stories are an important part of that, right? Because that's what makes all that.
Thanks, Sensei. Hanshi Legacy, let's finish with you. We're talking about the idea that we lose total encyclopedic knowledge and energetic knowledge every time a master passes on. What's our responsibility, and how do we prevent that from happening, even though it will?
Well, some is definitely lost. I guess that can be helped. Students, sort of have to strive to secure all and preserve all the master's teachings, right? And his personal history. You just have to do that. And if you're a good student, if you've been a teacher for a long time, that sort of naturally happens. It's like getting to know your kids and your kids getting to know you. It's just, yeah. And as far as the stories are, because good classical martial artists don't get in fights and practical things most of the time. The stories, maybe from his sensei's lifetime or his lifetime, are usually like a vision, or maybe there's a story that shows a practical application of and proves that something in kata really works, or something that's being taught in style really works. So again, just like everyone here says, and we're all lifers, so we'll all love our senseis just like our dads, and we get to know a lot about them. Like I lived with my sensei, he actually lived with me, like that.
Me too, actually. When my relationship ended up, I moved in with Sensei Legacy for a little while because he didn't want me sleeping in my truck anymore.
I've also stayed on both your couches when I've been through some things. Sensei Velilla, I want to see if you want to put a button on this at all. Is there anything after having listened you want to add or disagree with, or or do you want to leave it there? Where do you want to go?
No. I always look for, and I think Nick was right in the beginning. I was always, you only have an hour to train basically in a dojo. 15 minutes of which are stretching, right? So, in the beginning, when I was in the 80s training, and I would hear Sensei talking, it was like, oh my gosh, you're burning time here. I want to get to the techniques and learn how to throw somebody or punch and kick or block. But now I can't wait until after class to sit down and have dinner with Higuchi Sensei, so I can ask him a question, how this happened or how that happened, or because Higuchi Sensei's sensei was Makoto Gima, and of course Makoto Gima Sensei was Gijin Funakoshi. So genealogically speaking, karate wise, Gijin Funakoshi would be my great grandfather. So he has these direct lines of how they met at the Budokan and how this happened, how that happened. So to hear those stories, really kind of second hand is amazing. So if those things are important to you, but yeah, so once he goes away, all those stories are gone, and so it's important to continue that line, whether that's from your sensei or your own parent, because I did the same thing with my mother before she passed away, and it was important to ask about her childhood. And knowing that this was coming, that I wanted to share this with my daughter in the future, because I felt these were important, how my mother came to be, and about her parents, and to share these stories in the future when it's important to my daughter. So anyway.
I love that. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, my name is Sean Benson. I am one of your hosts. If you're watching on the YouTube later, comment, get angry with each other, start a fight. We love the traffic. If you're watching in the live right now, maybe pop over to the Zoom. We'd love to have you for what I'm about to mention. If you're listening on a podcast, that's amazing. Drive safely. But if you're on the live Zoom, we want your questions for Sensei Velilla or any of us around the topic we're discussing, and that chat button at the bottom is going to light up right now. And then I get the pleasure every week of introducing the co-host Sensei Randy Dauphin, Sensei Nicolas Suino, and Hanshi Gary Legacy. And I just want to say really simply, Hanshi Legacy created a tournament 48 years ago, which, as we mentioned, was initially, was it initially the Funakoshi Classic, Hanshi, or did it have a different name right at the beginning?
Yeah, well, we didn't really name it because it was like in-house, and
Yep.
then people started to want it to come. But we initially called it Funakoshi Classic. And then once I secured a place in Shorin-ryu, I changed it to Matsumura Challenge.
Right on.
It's much more like us to want to challenge classical martial artists to come and have somewhere to pressure test your art.
Love that. It was an incredible tournament. Sensei Suino came up. We had people there from the United States. We had people there from Mexico. We had obviously a ton of Canadians. Sensei Dauphin really ran the behind the scenes and the divisions and everything. So I just want to say thanks to you all for creating that. Thanks to you, Hanshi Legacy, for that umbrella of support that creates over, 48 years of any event running basically nonstop is insane. So thanks to you all. Sensei Dauphin was just saying as my intro about the 48th year of the, what we now obviously call the Matsumura Challenge, and just how incredible that is. How you're running it was incredible. Sensei Suino coming up, having Mexico in the house, and just grateful to be under the umbrella of such a thing that in 1993 I got to do for the first time. I didn't do so well. But it's been better since, and I will now give it over to you, Sensei Dauphin.
Thanks. I just want to say that while you're crediting me, lots of people do lots of work behind the scene on that. Sensei Legacy started it. I'm in conversation with Sensei Legacy and Sensei Suino regularly about these types of events. Lots of students, Sensei Kettleberger, lots of people are chiming in to help. I'm just standing there on the microphone on the day,
Here's the clue.
telling which people go to which. Yeah, but I appreciate that. And I'm here tonight to introduce Sensei Velilla, who he's been studying Budo since 1984. He is a Renshi Godan and Toyama Ryu Iaido, also a Renshi Godan and a Bato Do Iaido, Renshi Godan in Kyudo, which I really am excited to hear about Kyudo, and a Renshi Yondan in Shotokan Karate. He's the chief instructor at the Florida Budokan. He's a U.S. Army veteran who has completed postgraduate programs in Japanese studies at Sophia University in Tokyo and advanced public policy at Old Dominion University in Virginia. For several years, he administered international martial arts education and training to the Japanese Self-Defense Forces as part of the Department of the Army Security Assistance Program. Sensei has competed and placed in various Budo Arts in both the United States and in Japan. In 2023, Sensei Velilla was nominated for the Japanese Foundation Award, and in 2024 received the Korosho Award from the Kokusai Budoin, which we know as IMAF, for meritorious service to Budo. Sensei is dedicated to protecting, preserving, and expanding traditional Japanese martial arts and Japanese fine arts. I'd love to get into that a little bit too, Japanese fine arts, while fostering well-disciplined and capable individuals through participation in physical, mental, and spiritual training. So now that I gave you all the stuff that I ripped off of his website, I'm gonna let you know that Sensei Suino has been down there and come back and spoke very highly about Sensei Velilla's training, his dojo, his karate instructor. Just he has nothing but gushing things to say about you and your training. If you don't know this, Sensei Velilla, I'm a bit of a creeper, so I took time to go find some YouTube videos of you, and also to jump onto TikTok and look at various things. And we were talking about Tamashigiri, where I got to see you do some cutting. Excellent, Sensei. I loved seeing it. As you know, I'm very passionate about Iaido myself. Really nice waza and technique. I saw one thing of your students in your dojo where they're all moving in sync, and they were tight, and they had swords, and they were really close to each other. And I got to be honest, I was really impressed. There must be a high level of trust for people to be that close to each other with swords. I can only think of 5 people that I would want to be that close to with swords in my training. It's Suino and Sensei Legacy being some of them. Your dojo is beautiful. It's very traditional looking, and I look forward to being there one day, and I look forward to seeing you in June. And before I turn it back to Sean, I just always like to open the door to Sensei Suino when there are people on the show that he has a personal relationship with, in case he wants to chime in and share a couple things about Sensei Velilla.
Yeah. Well, Sebastian Sensei and I have known each other a long time. I know we've trained in a number of seminars around the United States. I think you were in Japan while I was over there living and training. My memory's not as good as it once was. I've been punched in the head a lot. But you're absolutely right about the dojo down there. My gosh, any martial artist who wants to get inspired should go down to Arching Oaks and just spend some time in that facility. It's absolutely gorgeous. The facility itself, the antiques that are down there, the atmosphere, it just makes you feel like you've gone to some kind of enchanted dojo, right? So separated from everything. Yeah, absolutely right. So, and I'll probably have some more things to add, but I want to make sure we get to Sensei's story. So
Very kind of you. Very kind. Thank you.
Thanks, Sensei. Sensei Velilla, let's start the way we like to. Tell us about what it was like growing up for you, and what brought you into your first martial arts club.
Well, I grew up in Brooklyn. New York. My first introduction to Japan was watching the miniseries Shogun. I don't know if you guys remember that. Back in 1980, there was this 12-hour miniseries with Richard Chamberlain.
Yeah.
My first introduction into the Japanese way of life, and that I became instantaneously enamored. I was 7 at the time, and I thought, wow, what is this place? This mysterious place called Japan. And then in 1984, this great movie came out called The Karate Kid that we all know and love, right? As cheesy as that may sound. And that sealed the deal for me, right? And that's what really started me in the martial art way. And I stuck with the Japanese martial arts since then. I remember back in the day, they used to have this program called Martial Art Theater. I don't know if you guys used to see that on Saturdays. It was like Kung Fu Theater, and it would come on at 3 o'clock, and my brothers would love watching Kung Fu Theater. And of course, the Chinese Kung Fu martial artists would always fight the Japanese guys, and I was always voting for the Japanese guys to win. Of course, they would always lose because it was Kung Fu Theater and it was about Kung Fu. But I always loved the Japanese way of fighting and the Japanese style. And anyway, since 1984, I've always stuck with karate. But started with karate in 84, moved to Florida in 87, where I began again taking Shotokan karate with my first sensei called Oscar Alicea, and his style of Shotokan was under Asai Sensei. Oscar Sensei also taught Iaido at that point, and in 1989 I started taking Shinkiage Ryu. And in 1993 I opened my first dojo at Inglewood Community Center, which was a community center in Orlando. Did that for a number of years. And then in 1996, I joined the Army as a military policeman. Uh, Lived in Korea for a little while, lived in Japan for a little while, where I actually started taking Kyudo in 1999.
Well, let's back up a little bit. I want to make sure we don't get too far ahead. So, one of the things that I'm always super excited about, and we all are, is, this is something Hanshi Legacy mentioned earlier. We're all lifers. Was there a moment in that early Shotokan club where you went, I'm in, this is it, I'm never leaving, or did that come later?
There was there's something about the dojo that always has called me to it. So it wasn't so much that I knew that I was in, it was something about the environment of the dojo, the group harmony, the teacher, the space, the uniform. There was always something about that called me, the etiquette, that called me to it. So I knew that I was in that aspect, that I always have to train. And if I don't train, then I feel something's missing, right? If I go a few days without training, something's wrong. Like if I'm on vacation for too long, something's wrong. I need to find a dojo somewhere. I need to work out. So yeah, early on, I think I knew I was in. I loved, one of the things about, I hate bringing this up, but the Karate Kid, as corny as that sounds, is the teacher-student relationship that they had. I loved that, even though that's movie magic, but that teacher-student relationship was something that was very special, and something that I looked up to. So that's how I knew that if that was special, they could make it special, they could frame it special like that, then that's how I knew I was in. Yeah.
Well, I love that, and I don't think anybody's going to find that cheesy on here. I think we all found a way of life through that relationship.
Yeah, Rob Macchio changed a lot of lives, I think.
I think so too. It was a scary day when I realized I'm older than he was when he played Miyagi.
Yeah.
Like 46 or something.
Yeah.
It was like, sorry, was it Shinkiagi that you said you went to?
Shinkiagi originally, yeah.
That so that was your second art in '89, or that was the club?
That was the second art. So Shotokan, I continued through Shotokan and then took up Shinkiage in '89. Yeah.
So talk to us about that. That's not an art that comes up a ton on our show.
No, so Shinkiage, very traditional. At the time, I didn't really get it. My sensei kind of threw that in there. I was 18, 17 at the time. I didn't like wearing a hakama. I remember having to put on the hakama, thinking, "Oh, this is so cumbersome." I remember having to do the etiquette with the sword, having to put down the sword, having to wrap the sageo around the sword, and having to sit in seisa. And I've always had trouble sitting in seisa, even back in the day. Now, after the army, my knees just don't cooperate with me, so I can't sit in seisa anymore. Which is great because in Toyama Ryu, you don't have to, everything is in a standing position. So, which is great. In Bato-Do, Iaido is all in a standing position. Kyudo is in a standing position. So this is great. I don't have to do any seisa, which is wonderful. But at the time, when you're young, you don't get it. You don't get the ritual. But the ritual is very important. And I actually think that ritual is something that now we're missing in our lives. Everything is so fast and so cliff notey, that we're missing ritual. And I think that's why some people come to the dojo looking for ritual, looking for that special time.
I love that. I'm actually going to throw that to you, Sensei Suino, and then I do think eventually we might go around the horn on that one. So, do you want to start there, Sensei Suino, or do you want to go into anything on the Shinkiage?
Well, on the topic of ritual, that really resonated with me because I just see people craving that. They crave being part of a group or a tribe, right? It's so fulfilling for people to have a group of people with like mind, be able to come together and train. But I have a surprisingly large number of people at JMAC who came from less traditional systems. And one of the reasons they cite is that they're looking for that classical connection, the ritual, the roots. And we're not real deep into it. JMAC's I would call mid-level casual dojo, depending on whether you're in Iaido or Judo. But we do the bowing, we use the Japanese words. We try to maintain the hierarchy of respect between the ranks. And yeah, I think people are craving it. I really like the fact that you brought that up. I think it's not separate from what we do. It's part and parcel of a classical approach. Yeah.
Now, you touched upon it, Sensei Sudo, but before we go around the horn, like, what do you think it gives us? What do you think is the need that someone without it, what are they missing, and why are they, is it innate or is it something that they get?
Boy, yeah, that's a whole show. Two things that come to mind. One is the ritual gives people a place of peace, right? You have a known progression of actions and words that everybody's participating in. You have the mokso, which is a quiet moment, quiet time. And then I think that idea of a known ritual, goes to something Hanshi Legacy often says. He often says that rank is really, the most important thing about rank is it keeps the dojo organized, right? And I think ritual keeps the dojo organized. And pay attention to hierarchy. It's like training, so forgive me, but it's like training dogs. If you let a dog try to run the household, the dog is a disaster, right? It's vicious, it's nervous, it never settles down. If you are the leader and you're firm but kind to the dog relaxes. And I think ritual in the dojo is like that too. People understand what the sequences are. They can live in that space and focus on their personal development and their training. And I would love to hear other ideas on that, but those are the two that come to my mind.
Thank you. Well, let's go to you for that, Hanshi Legacy. What do you think is the value of ritual, and what do you think it offers that other people who don't have it or people who come seek it are lacking otherwise?
I'm going to start in a strange place here. It's sort of like, looking at Catholics and Anglicans, or they have their certain rituals, which gives them an identity, so that you can identify someone who is like you, doing what you do. That's why we're all here now, because we recognize all that. It gives us a purpose, or keeps us together as clans. But I think mainly identity. You do all these rituals to sort of bring it all together, or to identify what you're doing.
Thanks, Hanshi.
Can't put it any further than that.
Sensei Dauphin, what do you like about ritual? What do you think people get from it?
I think the same thing that everybody said, right? It brings you in, puts you in a blanket of security, links you to the people around you. I think it evens the playing field a little bit, because they all come in. Everybody bows when they step on the floor. You're not centered out as being made to do something that not everybody else is also doing and participating in. I'll just say one of the things I like about the classics, I really find it links me to the past, to the greats. Funakoshi bowed when he stepped on the mat, and I bow when I step onto the mat. Musashi grabbed a sword, tucked it in his belt, wrapped his hand around it, and did certain things with it. I take a sword, I stuff it in my belt, I put my hand around it, and I think these rituals and these traditions link us to the great ones in a way that's maybe different than if you just walk into an athletic club and just start doing some stuff that maybe other people did, or maybe they didn't, or maybe nobody's ever going to do again. I think it's more important when you have traditions and rituals that you bring into it. I think it links you to the past and opens the door into the future.
Connects you to your roots. That's nice.
One thing I want to add, which is really just expanding on what Sensei Suino said, is the peace. And for me, peace comes through a certain type of surrender, but it's hard to surrender if you don't feel safe. And so that goes to what you said, Sensei Dauphin, like there's all these people around you doing the same thing. So you get to give over. And it's funny, I was actually going to mention the Catholic liturgy. Like you just go, hey, we're going to say this next. Then we're going to say this next. And it allows a mindlessness and a surrender that allows a peace. But I don't think it'd be possible if you're just making it up in the middle of the mall on your own. And so there's something about the group going, this is our thing. We're all good with it. And in that can be a quiet place of letting go. Sensei Velilla, let's come back to you. You can add to that. Well, you're the one who introduced that brilliant topic, or you can keep telling us about. I think did you end up at Kyoto next, or
Yeah,
did I
no,
miss?
no, yeah, yeah. The next thing was I started Kudo in 1999, and actually I started Kudo just as a, when I was in Japan, I really was working so much. I had every intention to continue, doing karate, but after working so much and doing PT and going by the karate dojo, I thought, my gosh, do I want to work out again? So I went to in the same facility. It's uh, many dojos in Japan are actually in a like their version of a YMCA. Kind of like I don't want to say a Budokan, but it's a what do you call it, Nick? It's like like a gym, I guess you could say, where they also play basketball and other stuff. They're a community center. And so on the top floor, they actually have the Q dojo where they practice archery. And so I went up there and it was very quiet, very mindful, slow, restful. Everybody was taking their time. And I thought, okay, so here's something I don't have to, I could still do Budo, still have the mindset, right? But not be stressed about what I was doing. I don't have to take ukemi, right? I've been working out all day. I'm in a stressful job as a military policeman. I really just want to relax, but still participate in the martial art. So let me do Kyudo. So let me do Japanese archery. And that's what I did. So in 1999, I happened to have one of the best instructors, which I just happened to be very lucky to train with at the time in Tokyo. And yeah, it just started in '99, so it was just by coincidence. So, and then after that, did that for several months. Then when I returned to the States, working in law enforcement and getting married and working various shifts, you kind of lose that routine of being in the dojo every evening, because of the rotating shifts and working the life. And then once I started, had a regular job working for the city. I was a division chief. Started back in the martial arts, seminars, getting back into the role of things. We moved to Florida in 2013, where we had our child and started talking to my wife that I wanted to open up a dojo, and we started looking for property. And after a few months, we found these 20 acres that we're on now, and we started building a dojo. And my wife was so supportive, and she said, "Yeah, go ahead, please, go ahead. You do what you need to do." So first started building the Q dojo, which I thought would be big enough, about 1,500 square feet. First, the only Q dojo in the state of Florida. 5-person Q dojo, which I would also double as a EI dojo and a karate dojo. And then after a few years, we had so many students that I built the second dojo on the property, which is about twice the size of the other dojo, and for just EI and karate. So, and that's where we are now. So we've been here for the past 10 years, and we've built a large rock garden in between, and so we've been growing exponentially for the past 5 years. We've been fortunate to be, we have an employee from Japan who's been provided to us by the Japan Foundation, a Joy Program Coordinator, who's helping us expand our cultural classes in the city. And so she's going to be with us for the next year and a half. She's been with us already about 6 months. And so it's really going well. Japan is very supportive, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We've been working with several countries overseas, spreading Kyudo. We've been fortunate to spread Kyudo in Cuba, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. So opening those countries up to Japanese archery. and really kind of going to places where something I learned from the military, if there's a hole, you fill it. You know? So really going to places where it's needed, and kind of just spreading the arts, doing our part.
So let's just back up a little bit. There's two questions I have on this. One is, you were talking about needing in 1999. You're over there doing your PT, but you still need the Budo. Now, the military and your martial arts, they seem to dovetail in a way that gives you that. So even though physically you didn't want to do the karate, you still needed something. What weren't you getting, let's say, from the military that Budo, what is Budo separate?
Because, when you're in the military, you don't decompress. And I needed the time to decompress, and that's what the dojo allowed, particularly Kyudo. Because Kyudo allows at time, Kyudo is very mindful and sometimes, Kyudo is sometimes called Zen archery for that purpose. It's very mindful in your movements, it's very slow, and it still allowed me to be connected to Budo. You understand? So I was in Japan, even though I was working so much, I was in Japan and I needed to still feel connected to the roots. So I still needed to be there. I still needed to feel like I gotta kill two birds. I'm here. I gotta do something. If it's not gonna be karate, if it's not gonna be EI, and being that the dojo was so close to where I was working, I was going to do, try to do something. So going to the Q dojo was really my time to decompress and spend some time moving slowly, moving mindfully, and not stressing. It kind of take my mind away from work.
Yeah. So then this leads to my second question. Personally, when I think of Kyudo, I think of The Last Samurai, and you've got these wonderful battle scenes where the archers are making a big difference. What does a guy like me, what's something you wish people knew about Kyudo? Like, what are you thinking? Here's what it looks like. Here's what people don't quite get.
I think what a lot of people don't understand or don't realize about Kyudo is that samurai were archers first. I think people think that the samurai. You just think about the katana. That's all they think about is the samurai just use the samurai sword, right? But no, samurai were archers first. If they could shoot you with their bow, they would. If they could kill you at a distance, they would, right? And then once you got closer, then of course they would use the katana, or then the tanto, and then go jujitsu, right? Go hand to hand. But that's, I think, the first thing that they think people forget, that the samurai used the bow first on horseback. The bow, the Japanese bow that we use, is very large, 7 foot, between 6 and 7 foot tall. It has an off-center grip, and it's only used to kill people. Right? This is not a hunting bow. This is just like the katana. The katana was made not to hunt with; it was only to kill people with. Right? And same thing with the Japanese bow, is only for war, to kill people.
I love that. Thank you for that. Yeah.
It's not like the axe, right? The axe had dual purpose, right? Cut wood, war, right? Spear, for fishing or people. But the sword was only for other people, right?
Sensei Suino, I'm just going to go to you on this one, but I saw you grin devilishly when he said the samurai were archers first, and that seemed to really excite you. Is there anywhere you want to go with that, or anything you want to add to that?
Well, I just love the idea that we find Kyudo so calming when it is actually a martial art that's designed to kill people. And that's true of so many martial arts we do, right? There's just something about killing people in your imagination that helps us be calmer people. I'm actually joking about that, right? The whole tradition of Japanese Budo and Zen and working for your tribe, right, is about getting control of yourself, your ego, and your character in a very extreme environment. And so a lot of the philosophical approaches that the historical Japanese developed were about that idea of getting control of your ego, your fear, etc. So you could go into battle. So really, these things developed hand in hand.
Hey, Sean, I want to chime in here. I remember once at Niaido, seminar, since Suino was pontificating about like the joy of training and the energy that you build and all. And he looked at one of my students and said, "Do you feel this?" And the person said, "No." And he goes, "Well, what do you think about when you're doing your Yaido?" And she went, "I think about killing people." And you're one of Sensei Dauphin's students, aren't you?
So let's go back as well, Sebastian Velilla, to something else. We sort of glazed over, I think, you going to Japan. So here you are, you've been doing martial arts, you've been watching Okinawan and Japanese martial arts since the Karate Kid. You're in. What brought you to Japan, and what was it like for you as a guy who'd been thinking about this world since you were rooting for the bad guys in the Chinese movies?
To me, they were the good guys, right? But well, the army, the army. You know, I was stationed at Camp Zama. I was a military policeman, and when I first went, I thought, wow, what a great opportunity. But I was working so much. I was working 20 days on, 1 day off, and so it wasn't. I wish I could tell you that. I became a tourist. I wasn't. It was, when you're in the military, you are working. So that was the only time I really got the opportunity to go out was the time where I trained in Kyudo for that period of time. So, but I really did enjoy my time until I had the opportunity to go back in 2013, where I've been going back twice a year, every year since then, to make sure that I had, now that I own my own school, have a couple dojos, have quite a bit of students, that I'm on top of everything. And I feel a responsibility to make sure that all my I's are dotted, all my T's are crossed.
Sensei Suino just pinged me a question. I'll have him ask, but I'm equally curious. Sensei Suino?
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about the circumstances leading to you joining the army? Was that part of your family tradition? Was that something you had aspired to? I know it's a little bit of a sidetrack to the martial arts, but why'd you join the army?
Good question. So I worked at Orlando Police Department when I was going to college, and they had a hiring freeze. So because they had a hiring freeze, I was like, well, I'm not going to sit around and wait until they undo this thing. So I went, okay, the next best thing, I'll just go in the military and become a military policeman there. So that's what I did. Yeah.
Oh, so you not only joined the army, but you already had the vision to become a military policeman.
That's right. That's right. I was going to become a cop one way or another. I was always mission driven. I always had this frame of justice in my mind, I guess. And kid from Brooklyn, seeing a lot of violence in the streets and drugs and being around that environment. So I always had this sense of purpose, I guess. So yeah, I always knew that law enforcement was going to be my way for a long time. And all my jobs, whether working for the city or for the government, have always been law enforcement or security related.
I want to get back to law enforcement, but what do you think when you go through Brooklyn these days? And it's pretty nice, most neighborhoods.
Oh gosh, where we grew up, it's very posh now. But back then it was, in 1980s Brooklyn is like the Warriors. You ever seen the Warriors movie? Yeah, Warriors come out and play, right, with the bottles.
Yeah.
That was the Brooklyn I grew up in, So that's like a historical documentary for me. So it was on TV one time, and I my wife, I was like, oh, look at this documentary. Come watch this documentary. It's about the neighborhood.
It's funny because that's almost a metaphor for like old and new martial arts. It's like it was tough and gritty and shitty. And you got hurt.
It was, yeah.
And it's better for everyone now, but we liked it better then.
Right.
So here's one of the questions I was actually going to lead with, other than the wonderful topic you introduced. But I want to hear about your training of Japanese military. and their self-defense forces.
Right. So I worked for the Department of Defense in security assistance. So what we did was we brought in the Japanese self-defense forces to the United States and trained them on American military equipment. So it wasn't that we were training them in martial arts; we were training them in American military technology. So in this instance, I was at Fort Eustis in Virginia. So we were training them in. I was one of the school administrators. So we were so the uh, the instructors worked for us and they trained them in Apache helicopters,
Got it.
maintenance and transportation, that type of thing. But what we some of these folks, some of the officers who would come afterwards, I would actually train with them. In some of them knew martial arts, some of them didn't. You'd be surprised how many, us as gaijin, us as foreigners, we see a Japanese person, oh, they must know martial arts, right? And you'll be surprised how many do not know martial arts. Yeah, very surprising. As a matter of fact, I went to Japan. Well, several years ago, I was in Japan. I had my sword with me. I was going to a Iaido tournament, and I was on the train, and they were asking, "What are you doing here?" They were practicing their English, and I was saying, "I'm going to Iaido Shinsa. I'm going to a sword tournament." And they're like, "Iaido Shinsa? Like, what is that?" They had no idea what that is. So you'll be surprised how Budo is not very popular even in Japan. So it's something that we're really got to try to help 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 keep it alive,
And
particularly the traditional arts.
and by that token, how do you then feel about military either over there or cops over there or in America who don't train a martial art? What's your take on that?
Well, they train in self defense. They have a practical self defense. So there's not an issue with, and the Japanese, they have their stuff together as far as um, their self defense, and they certainly know how to take care of themselves.
Mm.
But the traditional martial arts, just like everywhere, is dying. And in Japan, they, as you know, they have a low birth rate, right? It's an aging society, and so there's a real big problem for the future. So you have this low birth rate coupled with um, the youth who is really not interested in their grandfather's art, right? Just like our youth are not interested in what our grandparents did, right? They're throwing away the oak furniture to buy stuff from IKEA, right? So they don't want to know about what this jite does or what this sai does or what this nunchucks does, right? They rather do something else. So they're really not interested in what their grandparents did, and particularly before the war. So unfortunately, that's something that's really happening now in Japan. So we I think really have got to do our best to try to keep the traditional arts alive outside Japan.
Well, so this goes to what I was going to open the show with, which is you've got, for the most part, martial arts in North America coming from servicemen from the wars who learned it over there from those grandfathers. And then now you've got fundamentally you're going and teaching Japanese people some of their own art at times. Talk about that sort of bizarre, or is it not bizarre? Is it just the flow of the water down that roof?
Is that question to me?
It is for you, Sensei Velilla, yes.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have several Japanese students. So that is, in a way, that is a little odd, isn't it? That they're coming here to learn about their own system. Some of them, in fact, some of them don't speak Japanese. So we're in a way teaching them firsthand. We have a Japanese lady who's part of our cultural program who grew up in Peru, so she doesn't speak Japanese at all. She spoke her native language is Spanish. So something that you don't hear about, where the second and third generation that grew up outside Japan. But also we have a well-known WWE wrestler who comes to our dojo, and to study the traditional arts because he didn't study them in Japan. So he comes here. So, which is an honor for us that they're coming here to learn about their own arts, which is a fantastic honor for us. But it is a little odd to think about, right? That they didn't learn it there, that they're having to leave they're doing it outside their country to do it here to then take it back. So, but that's the nature of things. That's the nature of things.
Sure, let's go to you with this one, Hanshi Legacy. We've talked about this, and you can talk about teaching Japanese students or not, but just generally the idea that now in North America we could arguably be at the forefront of an art that's not from here. Where do you go with that, or what do you want to talk about in relation to that?
Kuni Ibisuzaki. And Ibisuzaki was a cancer researcher. He was Japanese, and he wanted to learn martial arts. So we taught him karate. And he, at one point, and I'm just saying this because he said, Sensei, I really want to thank you because you really made me feel the worth of some of our traditions. I never forgot that ever. So, it's like, I think I touched on this before, like the Japanese people like cowboy hats and Elvis Presley, the sideburns and stuff. And we like their arts. We like karate, the fighting, and some of their other things. So it's just like cultural exchange, sort of. Or tired, they spent too much time doing theirs and they're looking for something new. And I think that's basically what's happened. It's just not everybody likes one thing.
Sure. And then Sensei Suino, you've lived over there. You've obviously trained a million people and trained with a million people. What's your take on the idea of, I'm not really even talking about cultural exchange, but just the idea that a lot of people over there might not even know of something that you went to get there.
Yeah, absolutely right. You would mention Iaido to a lot of Japanese people, and they struggled to understand what it was. They would cast around for other words and eventually figure out, what you were talking about. I had so many folks, and this is even back in the late 1980s, say to me, "Oh my gosh, you're doing things that our people have set aside." This is even back then. They're like, "You're more Japanese in that regard than we are," which I don't think it's not that's not really true, but that was their impression about it. That they were a lot of my peers in the dojos, my age, had kids who were trying to play baseball or move to Australia or do something Western and not study the martial arts. And I had a couple of friends who started dating Japanese women who said, "Oh, when we get married, you're going to stop that martial arts nonsense, right?" And happily, those people were smart enough to decide that it was time to start looking for another girlfriend. But yeah, I've definitely seen that, and I don't know where it's going to go. I mean, it's I think martial arts is one of the most profound activities a human being can do. When you stay in what we do for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, it completely changes how you interact with the world. And we have the opportunity, after we get kind of good at it and we start building the dojos up, we have the opportunity to influence so many people, to give them a home, give them a tribe, help them do their personal development, help them to do self-defense, help them to stay physically healthy so they live a better life and a longer life. So this is it should be on the list of world treasures, right? Martial arts won't die as long as there are people like us, and that's a really good thing.
Thanks for that, Sensei Suino. Sensei Dolphin, I know you got something to chip in for us.
Yeah, I wanted to say, well, the world is just more global now and connected, right? We're more global. So I guess in some sense that makes it easier for people in Japan to decide to wear cowboy hats and listen to Elvis Presley, and for us to be, I want to swing swords and do karate. But I wanted to say something about Sensei Suino, that he probably would never boast about it, but I know, going back to knowing stuff about your teachers, um, when Yamaguchi Sensei was sick, and then when he recovered from that, and Sensei Suino went to visit him, they went to the dojo, and Sensei Suino did a bunch of Iaido with a bunch of Japanese students in the dojo, and Yamaguchi was pretty much looking at the students saying, "See this guy Jin? This is how you do Iaido. You do Iaido like that." Right? So it really isn't about where you were born. It's about the passion and the drive that you have for doing the thing, and you embrace it or you don't.
Thanks for
You
that.
have you have been chosen.
Yeah, I like what you say, Hachi. It's not always the case that we choose the martial art. Sometimes the martial arts choose us, right?
Yeah.
Sensei Velilla, talk to us about your competition. Talk to us about what it was like when you were younger, what made you compete less, or if you're still doing it. Tell us all about that. Tell us about competing here versus Japan.
Yeah, when I was, I think all of us, when we compete when we're young, it's about proving yourself, right? You know, proving whether you could do it, whether what your sensei taught you was any good, testing yourself against your peers. And when I was 16, 17, 18, competing in Florida against, in the state championships, and, I think took grand champion in, I don't know, like 88, 89, something like that. And I've got the 6 foot trophy still here. My parents kept, in the attic for all those years. And I was surprised to see it when I got home from the army all those years. But yeah, and throughout the years, I stopped competing karate wise in the 80s. EI, I competed in the last, you can't see them, but they're on the wall back here. In the late, well, 2015, 2016, I competed in EI, took, first place in Tamashigiri and uh, Kumitachi, which is 2-man forms, and competed both here and in Japan. It's the competitions here and in Japan are pretty much set the same way. And we train the same way here as we train in Japan. So within the same organization. So they weren't very much different as far as who you were competing against and what you were doing. Maybe the size of the amount of people that were there was a little bit different. In Japan, it's a little less, believe it or not, than here in the United States. Here in the United States, there's a lot more people competing than in Japan.
Mhm.
But all around, it's the same thing. So, but it's good to be in Japan. One, I think it's good in Japan to be in Japan and to compete and place, because that's, I think, a notch, right? It's something you could check off the box. And also, it's good to be in Japan and test and pass. That's another thing. That's another check the box, right? To be there. Kind of like if you're Catholic, you got to go to the Vatican, right? If you're in the Japanese martial arts, you should go to Japan and practice and test, I think, or compete. I think that's one of those things you got to check the box on.
Sensei Suino, it's interesting, when he said compete, place, which you've done more than once, you nodded, but when he said test, you got real excited. Why did you get more excited about testing than competing when arguably you made your young man's name a bit with the competing?
Boy, I don't know. Those are such great experiences, and especially in Iaido, that's how you pressure test, right? You don't, unless you do kendo, you're not fighting in Iaido. You have to perform a set of waza at a very high level and be judged on it. Those were great experiences for me, but I relished the challenge, the preparation, the little bit of nerves I had going in, the environment, the endurance you had to have. You go to a test or a competition in Tokyo, it's an 8-hour ordeal at least. I loved all that, and as I've said on the show before, it was a wonderful experience because I just idolized my teacher, and so had I just gone in there by myself, right, and gone, I'm at these things, it would have been a very different experience. It would have been for me. Um, but in the moment, it was for my teacher. I did it for my teacher, and I felt supported by him, which probably helped me a lot. Um, and then afterwards, looking back on it, when you have that kind of victory under such high pressure circumstances, I think it helps you realize that you can do anything, right? You know, you can step in a room with 300 Japanese people and get the gold medal. I had nothing like that before that in my life. I mean, I won some sport competitions, stuff like that. But having done that, you know, 4 times in a row, um, it changes your. Changed my confidence. I can't speak for everyone, but I left Japan feeling like anything I set my mind to, I could do.
I took my Yondan test in a gymnasium in Japan, surrounded by all the Japanese sensei, a bunch of people I didn't know, around the perimeter, right? I was in the middle of this gymnasium. They put me, and all the judges, 7 judges sitting there, right? Surrounded by Japanese, had no idea who these people are. Okay, go, do your kata. In front of all these people. Talk about pressure testing, right? Doing it. You know, of course, you practiced it a million times, so that way you know exactly what you're doing. You could have done it blindfolded. Okay, now you've done all your kata. Now, tamashigiri, here you go. Go. do your 6 cuts, you know? So, yeah, you had to perform, and you had to do it right then, and no BS, right? So, and you're right. Nick is absolutely right. You had to do it, and but you feel accomplished. Wow, I did it in front of all the Japanese sensei. I proved myself, right? And here's this gaijin, right, who was here, who you know, did it in front of us, and it was like respect. You were able to join the club, right? So they gave you that recognition. So that was great. That was great. So it's a great feeling to have.
Sensei Suino, what's the value of the tamashigiri? Is that pressure testing your iaido?
Oh, I think it is, and I think Sebastian Sensei will say the same thing, right? It tests your tenouchi, right? Your how much force you have. I mean, just it's not like fighting, but it definitely tells you whether you are holding the sword and swinging it right. Uh, yeah, and it's about as much fun as you can have without getting thrown in jail.
I mean, yeah, it's the practical application, right? Just like karate, you have to have kumite. And can you imagine karate without kumite? Right? You have to be able to punch somebody. You need to be able, in karate, when you punch somebody, you need to be able to feel the concussion of that punch, right? Same thing with when you're doing tamashigiri. You need to be able to feel what it is to go through the wada, right, with the correct hasuji, which is a blade angle, right, with the practical application of how to do it correctly, right? So, and do it with a steel katana, with the right weight and proportion. So so it's the practical application of using the sword more than just swinging it. You have to really know how to use it. So.
And I saw a little glint in your eye as well, Sensei Nofa. Anything you want to add to that?
I just like the stuff about you were there, Sean, when I competed. You were taking pictures of me. And while I wasn't in Japan, I thought it was kind of funny that Omi Sensei came and said, "Oh, the Japanese instructors want you to grade tomorrow." And I was like, "Omi Sensei, I have a teacher. I don't want to grade. Like, I'm just here to do the competition." And then when I called Suino Sensei, he was like, "Randy, just don't piss them off. Just do what they ask you to do." And it was funny because they didn't know me from Adam when I went up to grade. I guess my perspective is a little bit different. I was really detached from their opinions of me because I've already had to grade in front of people like Sensei Suino. And you know, Sean, I was on the floor with that one lady, and she was so scared that like the sound of her sword going into her side was like it was like I thought she was sending a Morse code signal to somebody. So nervous, but I just found the whole experience to be a little bit. I didn't feel the confidence that they're talking about. I felt detached from everything, and then I felt like I was in high school football tryouts because after you passed, you had to go find your number on a piece of paper to see what grade they had graded you to. And some people were like, oh, I failed. That's how they found out that they failed, because they couldn't
Right.
find their number on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And I just miraculously arrived as a shodan, having not known anybody in that organization or that system.
Right on. And then Sensei Velilla, do you go back to do the Iaido and the Kyudo, or what is your, when you're going and working with people in Japan, what's your primary art, or are you doing?
No, I do all three. Yes, I teach all three during the week. So,
Right.
yeah, so I teach all three during the week. So when I go to Japan, I hit all three sensei. So, Iai, Karate, and Kyudo. So I see them all. You know, when you're there, I'm there 2 weeks, so I try to see them all. I'm a bad tourist when I go to Japan. The only time I'm a tourist is when my wife comes with me. She forces me to go do this and that. But the other times, I'm usually in the dojo, you know, visiting this sensei or that sensei, and really trying to absorb as much as I can. So yeah, I'll be going to Japan again in October, trying to absorb as much as I possibly can once again before it's too late, you know.
And before we get to your 10 questions, if you want to let us know who your three current senseis are, and if you want to let us know anything interesting or a fun story about them, or, you know, just to make sure we get all the names out there properly in case anyone missed them.
Yeah, so my current EI sensei is Hanshi Mukai. He's the Toyama Ryu and Batodo sensei. So it's Toyama Ryu and Batodo. Those are two different styles that we practice. And then Kyudo sensei, I study with Iijima sensei, which is my first sensei. I also study with another sensei in Nagoya. And then my karate sensei, of course, is Higuchi sensei.
Right on. It's nice to hear those names. That's what we're here to do. Yeah, make sure those lineages get their shout out. Are you, Sensei Sabastian Velilla, ready for your 10 questions?
Oof. All right. All right.
Oh, what you just saw there, if you looked up, was Sensei Ofen's also excited because he gets to hit start on the 10-minute timer. So we ask that you answer as impulsively as you can.
All right.
Feel free to expand on your answers because you do have 10 minutes.
Okay.
What is the most effective move in your martial arts arsenal?
Just one move, or it could be anything.
Wherever you want to go with that question.
Well, I guess it depends on the situation. You know, long range, short range, or mid range. But you know, jab and cross maybe. You know, it's fast and direct. You know, one of my favorite is a low roundhouse kick, usually to the sciatic nerve. That's something that I like to do in karate very often, is to hit that front leg. If I'm rolling around on the ground, rear naked choke, that's always a good one. You know, Osotogari is another good one from standing position, right? Elbow strike, front kick, maigiri. So it all depends on the situation, where you're at, what's going to be my favorite, you know.
Who is the most influential martial artist in your life?
I would say that Gishin Funakoshi. Gishin Funakoshi would be the most influential. I have several of his books. He is Budo genealogical speaking, would be my great grandfather. He is my teacher's teacher's teacher. So he has a huge impact in the karate world, and a huge impact in how we teach here. So yeah.
And you think, you may have touched on this, is the most influential martial artist of all time, and why?
I would say Gijin Funakoshi, but also Musashi. I would think because on the sword side, he would be the guy, because of his practical life experience that he had in his, you know, fighting on the street. But Gijin Funakoshi and Musashi would be those two guys.
What excites you most about the next 5 years of your training?
My training would be training the next leaders in the martial arts in the dojo. I really think that a sensei's job is to make other senseis. You know, a leader's job is to make other leaders, not more followers. And if we're going to help facilitate or expand the arts, then we have to try to make more senseis, you know. And I really look forward to making more senseis and you know, just growing and facilitating the arts, you know. So that's what I'm really looking forward to as we continue to expand. Make more leaders.
Mhm.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you get there?
Your mom is here and she wants to say hi.
Can relate. Do you have a favorite film and television martial artist, even if they're not that great in real life?
You know, I have to go back to Pat Morita in The Karate Kid. You know, if that movie's on TV, I'll stop and watch it. Like The Shawshank Redemption, that's another one I'll stop and watch if it's on.
Yep. I love that. I'm not sure we've had Mr. Miyagi, Pat Morita, as the actual favorite.
Yeah, he's not a real character, and he knew nothing about the martial arts,
Yeah,
but he played a good character. He did a great job.
I love that. Um, do you have a martial artist, living or dead, in all of recorded history you'd like to train with the most?
Musashi would probably be, yeah, or Funakoshi, but Musashi maybe because Funakoshi was more of an academic. He wasn't a fighter, but Musashi really did have the, you know, that fighting prowess. He kept it real. So yeah, someone I would like to sit down with and learn from. Absolutely.
None of your three martial arts exist. What art would you like to dedicate your life to?
Probably jujitsu, Japanese jujitsu, judo jujitsu, something like that.
And our last two questions come as a pair, Sensei. What is your greatest achievement and what is your greatest regret?
Greatest achievement. You know, I married a wonderful wife, someone who's very supportive, and she's not here right now, so she's not telling me to she's not telling me to say that. But I really did. I married well and have a great supportive wife and a great daughter who's going to be a future leader. And those things can't beat it, you know. So of course I have a great student, a great dojo, but I have a wonderful wife, supportive wife, and without a great partner, you know, you're not going very far.
And greatest regret?
Greatest regret. Wow. How's that song go? Regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. You know, if regrets means that I had to, let me see, that I would have to change something, then I wouldn't change anything. Because if I have to change something, then I wouldn't be here today. You know, I think if you change one variable, then the outcome changes, right? Just like in Kudo, if you change one variable, you're going to miss, right? So, so I don't have that many regrets, to be honest with you. There were some things that I didn't, obviously, I'm not happy about, or you know, perhaps I could have done a different way, but regrets, not too many. Not too many regrets.
Thank you, Sensei. Sensei Dauphin, how's our time?
3 minutes and 16 seconds left.
Woo! Well, you know what's beautiful? Thank you for those 10 questions, Sensei. We had a question come in from YouTube, from Dean O'Donnell. Hi, Dean. Nice to have you with us. Nice to have you with us on YouTube. Great question. And I think we might end up going a little around the horn on this one. Hello, and I bow to you, senseis. Thank you, Dean. And yes, Karate Kid, the gateway drug, LOL. Question, and we'll start with you, Sensei Velilla. Best advice for starting martial arts karate again, at 43. I am in good health, but am I too old? Sensei Velilla, what do you say to that?
Are you told? No. But the reality is there may be some challenges. I had some, I have a student who started karate at 60, and obviously you're not going to be as limber as someone who's starts at 14. But can you do it? Yes. Yeah, obviously you can. If you try hard and you apply yourself, you could do it. Uh, just apply yourself, try hard, go to the dojo, study. Don't just wait to go to the dojo to practice. Like I tell my students, you don't need to be in church to pray. You don't need to be in a dojo to practice. Okay, so you have to apply yourself, hit it hard, you could do it.
And quick question for you, Sensei, before we go around the horn. When you talked about your martial arts fading a little because of work and life and schedule, did you have a prolonged period where you weren't training?
Oh, for sure. I had about 10-year period where I didn't train. Yeah.
So I think I want to just amplify for you the idea of, again, because while all of us, can relate, we haven't actually taken a pause. So was it hard? Was it humbling? Did you have to sort of creep your way back in, or was it just, no, I'm doing this again? Was the
No.
ego of it a challenge?
No, actually during that 10-year, I always thought about it though. That's the thing, is that I always thought about it. Something I always had it was always on the radar. I've got to return to the dojo. If there was a seminar I could go to, I would. I used up my last bit of the GI Bill to take a karate course at a local college. So I always thought about it, even during that time where I couldn't, participate in the dojo because of rotating shifts or what have you. So, but it was always on my mind. Yeah.
Right on. Hanshi Legacy, what about you? 43 years old. Is it too old?
No, but I will tell you, I'll give you the best hint that anybody's going to give you, and that is join a classical karate dojo. Hunt that down, because that will serve you on any purpose that you may try to achieve, body, mind, and spirit, right? That's the best advice I can give you. Then after that, it's up to you. It's how you have to have a good mind and what you want to do. Choose a really good club, and then dedicate yourself to that sensei. And that's your best formula for success in martial arts.
Thanks, Hanshi. Sensei Suino, 43 years old, fit, but, too old?
Heck no. 80 is not too old. If you come in and do it, maybe if you're 80, you don't go and join a karate class and go to Kumite the first day. But no, there's not too old. Your goals have to be different. I've had plenty of older people start training with me, and some of them have been, the oldest person I ever gave their first black belt to used to be 62, but in the last decade that's changed. I've given black belts now in Iaido to people almost 70 years old, and they deserved it. So it's never too late to start. You just got to start.
Right on. Sensei Dolphin, what do you want to say to our new friend Dean O'Donnell?
When I joined with Sensei Legacy, I'll mention the same name again. I joined with Kenny Ibu Suzaki, who I was 18 when I joined with Sensei Legacy, and Ibu Suzaki Sensei was 62 when he joined. And we both trained together until he died, and he was almost, I don't know, he was 88 or 86 or something like that when he passed away. And I'll quote you, Sean, you might as well get in there because the time's going to go by anyway, right? So, and the other story that I'm reminded of is Sifu Graysonen, who's a Chinese martial artist, but Chinese practitioner. When Graysonen and Sifu was in China, there was a person in a park that he was always kind of hounding to train him, and the guy kept brushing him off, an older guy. And he said that one day when he walked in the park, he had his leg up in between his body and he was hugging like a small tree. And finally, this guy said he would train him. And he said, Sifu, you must have been doing this since you were a little boy. You're so limber and you're so... And he said, I never started doing martial arts until I was 50 when I retired. And Sifu Graysonen said, how is that even possible that you can be this flexible? He said, I've been doing it every day for 30 years. How is it not possible that I can do this? right? So you're 42, you're gonna be fine, right? You're gonna be fine. Listen to your body and listen to your teacher, and you're gonna be fine.
Listen to your body, listen to your teacher. Love that. Sensei Suino, you're going to tee up our last topic from Sensei Velilla before we say goodnight. What do you want to make sure we get to?
Well, I want to make sure we get to the IMAF Americas seminar conference coming up in June. Sensei, you hosted it last year. It was amazing. Do you have some things you want to say about that event?
The one that we just did, or the one that's coming up?
The one you did last time, and then we'll kind of segue into the one that's coming up.
Well, the one we just did was great. We had a 3-day seminar in which we had concurrent classes, having two dojos. We could have classes going at the same time, in which we had Aikido and Iai and Kyudo and Karate several classes going at the same time, in which students had the ability to choose which one they were going to go to, kind of like a college course. So it was real nice for them to be able to have the opportunity to train in multiple arts and multiple disciplines. So that was quite nice. It was good to have Higuchi Sensei here and Komoto Sensei from Japan. And we'll be seeing Komoto Sensei again in June. Yes. So I guess we'll be doing Kyudo again. We didn't get to talk about Kyudo too much, but we'll be doing Kyudo in Ann Arbor in June. So those of you who have not tried Kyudo and you're in the Ann Arbor area, would love to see you and try Kyudo on June 28th. Is the day we're going to have two Kyudo classes. Is that right?
Yes, I believe that's right. The Saturday, right? Exactly.
Yes, that's Saturday.
Yep. You know, one of my favorite memories from last year is myself and several JMAC people that came with me. We got off the airplane. We went and got our rental car, and we got 2/3 of the way to your dojo, and all the lights in the dashboard came on the car, and the signal is said your essentially said your brakes have failed, and we're going to limit you to 30 miles an hour. And so I had to decide. You know, the seminar was going to start at 5. This was like at 4:30. We're on the highway. We're trying to get there, and I had to decide: do I stop the car, call the rental guys, and then hope to get to the dojo in time, or do we just take the risk with basically no brakes? Well, guess what we did? We sailed to the dojo. We sailed to the dojo. Walked in at the last minute. It's hot in Florida. The AC couldn't keep up. I walk into the dojo, and there's 50 guys in there doing loud ki-eyes and stomping on the wood floor and pounding the karate. And it was just like walking into a Bruce Lee movie. And so we go in there and train. And of course, most of us are not Shotokan guys, so we're doing everything we can to keep up. But I got to tell you, and this is my favorite memory, the whole weekend long, you know, it's 85, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. It's humid. The training is hard. The training is hot. There's tons of people in the room. And of those 50 guys, most of whom are lifetime martial artists, Higuchi Sensei at age 83, 84 has more energy, is faster, right?
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable.
Incredible.
Right? So if for no other reason, you might not be a Shotokan guy, right? You might not be that interested in karate, but if you want to go and train with a guy who will inspire you for a whole year, just in terms of his sheer energy and positive attitude, then come on and train with Higuchi Sensei.
Incredible, man. Yeah,
Right?
really incredible. And that's the dojo. I think the dojo does that. You know, the dojo really keeps you young. It really keeps you moving, really keeps you done. That's a special thing about Budo. That really keeps you moving, really keeps you young and healthy.
Really love that. And about the Kyudo, I've never done Kyudo, but when I was trekking through the Himalayas in Bhutan, archery is the Bhutanese national sport. And they have targets that are 11 inches wide, 3 feet high, and they set them 140 meters apart. It's longer than a football field. And you just stand across the field and you fling, and then they basically dance around each person's effort. It's a hell of a time. And so if I'm free, I'll definitely come down for that Kyudo, because it's such a joy to loose an arrow.
Yeah. So the Kyudo target is about 13 inches circular round. And Kyudo is only one kata, 8 steps. So very easy to learn. The Hasetsu is one kata, 8 steps. So yeah, very easy to learn.
Now listen, Sensei, you just said easy to learn. I beg to differ. At least my 28-year-old knothead self found it really, really challenging.
How long did you
We
do
gotta,
for?
we gotta get them in, Sensei. We gotta get them in. We gotta get them
Yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah,
One
yeah. No,
kata, 8 steps. It's easy. Come on in. Come on in.
yep, yep. I practiced twice a week for 3.5 years. Took my Shodan exam, passed, and then I needed to do other stuff.
Shodan and Idan are pretty easy. Everyone bottlenecks at Sandan because they're required to hit the target.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, a big bottleneck at Sandan, and then on it gets super tough. But yeah, so but you got to get your technique right for Shodan Idan. The correct form is correct hitting. So but then after that it gets super serious and hard. But yeah, come and try it at Nick's dojo. Be great in Ann Arbor. We'd love to see you. If not, come to my dojo in Florida, the Florida Budokan in Central Florida.
Love it. It's easy for you, Sensei Suino, and Eugene Harrigal disagree. Yeah. By the way, I want to say thank you to Robert Shlumsky, Justin Shea, Andrei Setashev, Alden Adair, Josh Kitchens, Cristiano Landel, Dridi Giuliani, Stavros Stabrulius, and Emily Ruth Driscoll for running the behind the scenes on this show, keeping the promotions going, keeping the vibes out there. Thank you. We don't have this without you. Hanshi Legacy, what do you want to say about our time tonight?
I enjoyed your journey, your martial arts journey, and I thought that you had a good harmony with this group. You know, like you were all in the same space, sort of. That's what I felt. I don't always feel that. Couple of other things. I said the exact words you said when I said about no regrets. Those exact words. If I would not have done what I did now, I wouldn't have ended up here.
That's right.
I said that exact same thing that you saw. And then finally, if I had to choose another art other than the ones I did, I don't know if you remember, but I said judo. Because I think, Sensei, you did judo a little bit, did you, Sensei? This Suino?
Yep, yep.
Yeah, I still would like to try that. That would be so nice. Anyway, thanks so much for being with us. I really liked our talk. Hope to see you sometime in the future.
Likewise.
Thank you, Hanshi Legacy. Sensei Suino, what do you want to say about our time tonight?
This was great. You know, when we see each other in person, there's usually a lot going on. We're busy. We train, right? Gotta keep the show going, and we don't get a chance to chat very much. This was probably the most conversation you and I have ever had. And
I know.
I love it. Super grateful for it. I thank you for that, and I'm really looking forward to our time together in June, our training, and to spend time with the senseis.
That's great. Yeah.
Thanks, Sensei Suino. Sensei Noah fan?
Sensei Velilla, I really am happy to be able to document your story. I was texting my wife, Christine, back and forth, who does karate here. She's one of my students, and I said, you're gonna get to train JMAC with this guy's teacher. He's a real badass here. She's like, oh, really? She's very excited to be able to go and do an art at JMAC because she doesn't do Iaido. So it would be nice for her to go and do karate with her teacher. I read all these notes and I felt a little bit kindred to you with some of the things you were saying, like Karate Kid, loved that movie. The original Shogun, I loved it. I also, we mentioned Richard Chamberlain, but you can't mention the first Shogun and not mention Toshiro Mifune.
Oh, yes, you're right. Absolutely.
You know, the perennial samurai, movie samurai. The Kung Fu Theater stuff, man, my cousins and I used to watch that and beat the shit out of each other on Sundays trying to do the stuff that we saw in those movies. Interesting, you were an MP, and Sensei Legacy's current teacher, Anthony Sandoval, was in the Marines stationed and was a military police officer for a long time as well. I liked when you said if you don't train for a few days, you just don't feel right. And I'm like, sometimes if I don't train for a few hours, I don't feel right. So I can strongly relate to that as well. You know, congratulations on your spread of Kyudo to those other countries and your connection to Japan. Congratulations for that. We're all passionate about carrying that forward, but man, you're doing it on a different level. I like when you said that the bow in Kyudo, and the katana is to kill people. Because when I have new students in here and I'm teaching them Iaido, and I'll say like, you're blocking here, and then you're cutting their arms off, and then when you cut their stomach and they fall over, and then you lop their head off, and then they're looking at me like all aghast, and I'm like, well, did you think I was going to tell you this is to scale a fish? Like that you're going to cut carrots with this thing? Like, so I like that too. Um, I like when you said about you go to Japan twice a year because you feel a responsibility to go do that. Of course, you enjoy it, but it's nice that you feel that that responsibility comes through in everything you say about martial arts, that you feel a responsibility to move it forward. And I appreciate that. You had lots of effective moves. I liked your answer. Most influential in your life, Funakoshi. As I said, we were once at a seminar where somebody badmouthed Funakoshi and Sensei Legacy grabbed his karate bag and walked out. And a whole bunch of people walked out, and the instructor was standing there going, "What did I say? What did I say?" Right? Don't say bad shit about important people, and then people don't walk out of your seminars. Um, Also, I like you brought up Musashi as well, and as a person living or dead that you'd want to train with. Sensei Mustard, when we had him on, that was the same answer he gave. He said he would like to train with Musashi. Pat Morita, we had his fight choreographer on here. If you look, you'll find him in the archives, right? Heaven, your mom's over here. A lot of people have said that, myself included. Again, what you said, the same thing as Sensei Legacy, when you said you wouldn't change anything. It's not that you don't have regrets, but you wouldn't change those regrets because you might not be in the position that you're in right now. Everybody should listen to that. Again, kindred spirit. My wife is very supportive to the point where she's like, "You need to go to the dojo." Like, she knows me so well. She's like, "You need to get the hell out of here and go to the club and work out." And I really appreciate that. She helps me with everything. One of the people that I was talking about with the tournament was, she just took all kinds of stuff and just did it on her own without asking, and people don't see that behind. So it's great that you have a good partner, and I do too. And I'm really looking forward to meeting you and training with you. I'll be one of the people. I'll happily try and do some Kyudo. But I look forward to doing some karate and some Iaido with you.
In fact, my wife is an assistant instructor, so she'll be there at the seminar on Saturday helping teach. So
amazing.
That'll be a great opportunity.
Well, thank you so much for coming on our show. It's great to document your history with everybody else's that we've documented.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sensei Dolphin. It's funny because I wrote down the two things because I get to guide the talk so much. But yeah, if you don't train, you don't feel right. And I just wrote Miyagi in big letters because, a lot of people have mentioned Daniel or Ralph Macchio. But when I was 8, I wanted a Miyagi more than I wanted a Daniel.
Yeah, right.
Like, where is that? You can't be a Daniel without a Miyagi. And I'm sure we've heard that name, obviously, with Sensei Demura, but I just don't remember thinking about it that way. So thanks for reminding me of that. What do you want to say good night? Sensei Velilla, it's your time.
Oh, only the few things coming up. Well, thank you for the program and inviting me on and meeting Legacy Sensei and Dauphin Sensei. So it was real nice, and also yourself. It's the first time I get to meet you, so it was real nice to have this conversation with you guys. But we have the Kyudo seminar, by the way, coming March 8th and 9th next month. So anybody could come. Beginners are welcome. Of course, we have the Kyudo workshop on June 28th at JMAC in Ann Arbor, Michigan. November 1st is Tamashigiri tournament in Daytona Beach, Florida. So those of you who want to try cutting with the sword, please come on down. But also, big news is that Jason Kelsey from the NFL is going to be here at the dojo next about 3 weeks to shoot a commercial with his brother Travis, who's I don't know, I think he's engaged now to Taylor Swift or something. I'm not quite sure, but they're going to be here shooting a commercial based on Bloodsport. So right. Apparently they always liked the movie Bloodsport. They bought a beer brand called Garage Beer, and so they want to shoot the beer commercial here based on the blood sport commercial, based on the blood sport movie. I'm going to train them in Kyudo, EI, and Karate, in which they'll train, montage, drink their beer, and so on. But what's special about it is that they'll also do it behind the scenes, so they'll do a special on what we're doing here. So it'll bring a lot of, nice spotlight on the dojo, what we're doing. So it's a great opportunity.
That's cool.
Super. Yeah. Thank you, Sensei. Thank you to our new friends on YouTube Live. Thank you to everybody who came out of our Zoom tonight. Thank you for listening on your podcast and there's a YouTube later. Have a great night, everybody. We can't wait to see you next week for our host chat. Thanks,
everybody. Thanks, Sensei.
Take care.